The sun had set hours ago, but the night was far from peaceful. The wind howled, and the trees groaned as if they were alive. It was the perfect setting for a horror story, and yet, Samantha had never felt more alive. She was in love with the darkness, with the fear it brought. She had always been fascinated by the macabre, ever since she was a little girl. Her parents had always thought it was just a phase, something she would eventually grow out of. But as Samantha grew older, her fascination only grew stronger. And now, as an adult, she had found someone who shared her love for the horror genre. His name was Jack, and he was the lead guitarist of a local rock band. Samantha had met him at a horror convention, where he had been performing. They had struck up a conversation, and before she knew it, they were exchanging phone numbers. Their first date had been at a haunted house. They had screamed and laughed as they navigated through the dark, winding halls. It was then that Samantha knew she had found someone special. Over the next few weeks, they had gone on more dates, each one more macabre than the last. They had watched horror movies, visited abandoned buildings, and explored cemeteries. It was as if they were both addicted to the fear. But then, something strange began to happen. Samantha started having vivid nightmares, ones that left her screaming in the middle of the night. They were always the same, a dark figure chasing her through a forest, its eyes glowing like embers. At first, she thought it was just a side effect of all the horror they had been consuming. But the nightmares persisted, and soon, she began to see the figure even when she was awake. It wasn't long before Jack noticed something was wrong. He could see the fear in her eyes, the way she jumped at every little sound. He tried to comfort her, but it was no use. Samantha was convinced that something was after her. One night, they were driving home from a horror movie marathon when Samantha saw the figure again. It was standing at the side of the road, watching them as they drove by. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice shaking. "See what?" Jack replied, keeping his eyes on the road. "That figure, standing by the road," Samantha said, pointing. Jack looked, but there was nothing there. "There's nothing there, Sam," he said, trying to calm her down. But Samantha was inconsolable. She was sure that something was following them, something that wanted to hurt her. And as they pulled into her driveway, she saw the figure again, standing at the edge of the woods. "Jack, do you see it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack looked, and this time, he saw it too. The figure was tall and gaunt, its eyes glowing like hot coals. "Stay here," he said, getting out of the car. Samantha watched as he walked towards the figure, his hand reaching out as if to touch it. But then, something strange happened. The figure seemed to dissolve, disappearing into thin air. "What was it?" Samantha asked as Jack got back into the car. "I don't know," he said, his voice low. From that night on, Samantha's nightmares only got worse. The figure was always there, watching her, waiting for her. And then, one night, it finally spoke to her. "I've been waiting for you," it said, its voice echoing through her mind. As the days went on, Samantha's nightmares grew more intense. She was no longer able to separate reality from her dreams, and the figure was always there, haunting her. She became more paranoid, unable to function properly in her daily life. Jack tried to help her as much as he could, but he didn't know what to do. He had never seen Samantha like this before, and it scared him. He suggested that they take a break from their horror-related activities, hoping it would give Samantha a chance to recover. But it was too late. The figure had already taken hold of Samantha's mind, and it wasn't going to let go. She started having hallucinations during the day, seeing the figure even when she was wide awake. One night, Samantha woke up to find the figure standing at the foot of her bed. It was the first time she had seen it in person, and it was even more terrifying than she had imagined. It was tall and skeletal, with skin as white as snow. Its eyes were deep set and glowing red, and its hair hung in matted tangles around its face. Samantha tried to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. The figure reached out to her, its fingers long and thin. And then, it spoke. "You belong to me now," it said, its voice a hiss. Samantha tried to fight back, but it was no use. The figure was too strong. It took hold of her mind, twisting and warping her thoughts until she could no longer resist. Jack found Samantha the next morning, lying on the floor of her bedroom. She was unconscious, her body cold to the touch. He called for an ambulance, but it was too late. Samantha had already slipped away. The authorities were never able to determine what had caused Samantha's death. Some speculated that it was a heart attack, while others thought it might have been a stroke. But Jack knew the truth. The figure had taken Samantha, and there was nothing he could do to bring her back. In the days that followed, Jack became obsessed with finding out what the figure was. He pored over books and articles, searching for any information he could find. And then, he found it. The figure was a demon, one that was known to prey on those who were fascinated by horror and the macabre. It fed on their fear, using it to grow stronger. And once it had taken hold, there was no escape. Jack was devastated. He had lost the love of his life, and it was all because of his own fascination with the horror genre. He vowed never to let himself get caught up in it again, knowing that the figure was always waiting, just beyond the edge of the darkness. And so, Jack moved on with his life, never forgetting Samantha or the horrors they had experienced together. He knew that he would always carry a piece of her with him, and that the figure would always be watching, waiting for its next victim.